for coming out and thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.
And it's just such a beautiful store. Thank you. All right, so I'm just gonna talk to you. I mean, I can talk to you about anything. If you want me to talk about something in particular, let me know. But Shopgirls is based so in the 80s. Oh, come on, don't worry about it. So in the 80s, I lived in San Francisco. And actually at the time I lived in Oakland. And it was like a super poor time in my life. And I had no money and I ate rice for like a year. And it's like, you can't believe how many different ways there are to eat rice. Like I would sometimes be like, I'll do rice with butter. And then I do rice with salt. I mean, it was just like, it was the rice here and I was so poor and I needed a job and I bought one nice dress and I went to Magnin. Does anybody know what Magnin is? Oh, okay, good. Yes, I went to Magnin in San Francisco, which was the flagship store, which is where it was started. And I'm from like this little beach town in Southern California. So to me, San Francisco was like the big city and super cool. And like everybody, like I always felt like a, the country mouse. And so I had one nice dress and I went for an interview there. And you can come up here. And then I got the job. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. And so when she told me I got the job, I said, the dress I wore to the interview is the only dress I have. And it was true. And she said, just wear it every shift. And she said, and you'll save money and you'll buy new dresses with your discount and you'll be fine. I was like, okay. And then I kind of had like a chaotic childhood. And I don't know if you read Mary Jane or not. Okay, so if you read Mary Jane, the Cone household was my house. So, and Bonnie Cone was my mother. So my parents were always naked and they were smoking pot, and they were cooking pot, and my mother didn't shave her armpits. It would always look like she had guinea pigs in her armpits. Walking around and she never had a bra on. And it was just like, we were in Southern California and it was like all the other mothers like looked so perfect. They were like Mary Jane's mom. And so I had this really kind of, and our refrigerator looked like me. I don't know if you remember Mary Jane. That was our refrigerator. I grew up, I didn't know that you could change a light bulb because there was never a light in there. And I thought, everybody else gets a fridge with a light and we don't have one with a light. And I was like, no, you just have to put a light bulb in. Like, there's all these things that when I became a grown up, I realized that you can do if you want. Like you can have a fridge with a light in it, and you can clean your fridge and you can like know what's in there. So anyway, so I grew up like that, the Cone house. So I was always wanted to be like I always just wanted to be a grown up and have a nice house and have control over my life. And so when I got this job in San Francisco, I was like, oh my God, like it's the real world. And it's like people who are, it just seemed like it would be more sane, like, the Jimmy and Sheba throwing dishes. And that was my parents. Like we went through so many dishes. My mother used to empty the dishwasher and throw them down the hall and break them against the wall. I mean, it was like chaos. And so I just thought, this is the real world. So I get this job at Magnin and I went to Magnin and it was like, it was crazy in its own way. It was just like, wow. So first of all, all the saleswomen had been there like 20, 30, 40 years. So they were just decades older than me. And so, and I'm there and then they kind of hated me. And so I actually, and I was like, I didn't quite get what happened. So actually when I got the job, what happened is I had graduated from college and I got the job in the buyer's training program. And in the buyer's training program, you started on the sales floor for three months. But here I just made Zippy gets the job on the sales floor. So it was slightly different for me. So, but I was there and they just hated me and I had my one dress and they were just always like, so all these saleswomen in here, I didn't change anything. And there were more of them, but my editor's like, there's too many people here. So Miss Lena, her name was Nina, and she was from Yugoslavia, and she would go in the fitting rooms and she would pray, and I loved her, and she was so sweet, and I loved her so much, and I would just go into these panics because I needed money so badly, and she'd be in there praying, and then customers would be pouring in. I'd be like, you gotta come out. Her name was Danny. You gotta come get me. And she'd just be down there. And then I'd be like, okay, and I'd want to ring them up for her, but I'd have these panics because I would try and just ring them up for her. And Miss Liaskas cried every shift because she couldn't understand. I mean, it was just, and Miss Yolanda, I think her real name was Yvette. And she always had this candy ball and she was so mean to me. She was like, what are you doing here? Why don't you change your dress? Like, I don't have another. Anyway, they were so mean, and I would get really. So anyway, I would get kind of. Wasn't creative enough for me. Baby, come here, just come sit with me. So I did draw the paper dolls. And so I bought hold tags and I gave them to her. So every book can have a hold tag. But nobody's read this book yet, probably. But in when I was working in the store, I would just get bored and I'd have a creative impulse. And so I started drawing paper dolls on hold tags. And so I bought some hold tags and then so I drew these paper dolls. So we drew so I drew Jesus and we put Jesus on the register, and we weren't allowed to talk like Jesus because neither of us had the authority. But so and so we'd put Jesus, and this is Miss Yolanda. And then this is Miss Braun. The Braun sisters were these two Canadians. They really wouldn't speak to me. And they were absolutely these gorgeous, tall Canadians. And I couldn't tell them apart, except for one had a mole here and one had a mole here. So I just got an L and R left out. And they wouldn't talk to me. But like, because I'd walk in, I was saying, I'd be like, hey guys, how's it going? And they just would just look at me. I'd be like, oh my God. So that's the Bronze. And so anyway, so Miss Lena, I was making these paper dolls, and the real Miss Lena, I should just call her Miss Lena because that's what she is in the book. She was neat. And I was making them, she came out and caught me and she started doing the voices. So she was like, yeah, what are you doing? You're stupid cow. And we put Jesus at the register, and we just started paying paper dolls every shift. And we had so much fun. We'd crack up. We would just laugh so hard. And I loved her so much. And then she'd say, come in early tomorrow and we'll play paper dolls. So we played paper dolls. I did all the sales girl, and I do the customers, and I did our manager, and we would just do all this stuff. And she was so sweet. We had so much fun. So all of that stuff, her praying and the paper dolls and us sitting around talking about Jesus and Yugoslavia and Tito, she called it Yugo. Everything's true. And also the cosmetic ladies would give me advice. I think it was because I was so young. So I would come in early. And I would go to the cosmetic counter and I would do my makeup there. So I'd come in and I'd go to La Mer. I still haven't bought La Mer in my life. But I would go to the La Mer counter and I'd start with the La Mer cream. And I remember the La Mer lady saying to me, she's like, if you don't go up, you're gonna have a hanging face. And when I put cream on my face, I still think of that woman telling me. So I go there and I go to Lauder and I put on and I do all my makeup and perfume, and then I go and I'd work. And it was just like, I remember thinking, okay, this is like the nicest store and everybody's in Chanel and people are so elegant. And it's just as insane as what I grew up in. It was like, I thought I was like getting away from chaos, but this is like a different kind of chaos. Like it was a whole other chaos. And then when I was in the management training program, so then I moved to assistant manager, and I still was like having, I think my creative urge, and I find that readers are creative people, so you probably all have something you knit, sew, write. I don't know. In general, I've noticed that readers are actually really creative people. So my creative urge would be like, oh my God, I can't take the like Department 281 is down 5%. My knits are up, and I just couldn't. And so I would find creative ways. So when I was in management, I remember she said, we have to show all the new spring line. I said, well, let me do a fashion show. And she said, okay. And I said, I'm just going to do something different. She said, okay. So I went around the store and I tried to find everybody who could sing and dance. And I loved musical theater. And so we layered on the thinnest to all the way like 7 or 8 layers of clothes up to coats. And I taught them Adelaide striptease for guys and dolls. And then we spent the whole week working on it. He bought me the fucking tag. And then it's like, hey, vacuum ink, and we all dropped the new vacuum, but we just kept layering. And so that was when I thought I was doing that, and that was like my best week in the buyer's training program. And that's when I thought, I think maybe you have to do something else. Maybe this isn't the career for you. So I'm going to read a little bit. Did you say one person here has read the book? You've read the book. Oh,
So great.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so hard to write a book, and it's so scary, and you never know if it's okay or not. Like you just don't know.
Well, we were all sad probably when Mary Jane was done.
Oh, you're so kind. And no, it's such a weird thing because you don't. I mean, like, if you sew, like I was always bad at sewing. You sew and you're like, that's an excellent stitch. It's straight. Like, it's okay. But in writing, you just can't. It's so weird. You create something and you just don't know. You just kind of have to like live through it. So, all right. So the other thing, I borrow from my life in everything. So Mary Jane, I actually met somebody who was a summer nanny for a rock star and a movie star. She was summer nanny for a psychiatrist in Buffalo, New York. And I can say it now because it's in Cher's memoir, but they had Cher and Greg Allman for the summer.
Yes.
Up on the Detroit one, Cher's, but now I can say it out loud. I wasn't allowed to say it. That Cher wrote about it in her memoir. She mentioned it in 3 lines. That she and Greg went to Buffalo for Greg to get sober. And so they lived in Buffalo for the summer on the 3rd floor. And I met a woman who was the nanny. And I said to her, like, what were they like? And she's like, I don't know. I was like, did you eat with them? She's like, I don't think so. And I'm like, did you go through her clothes? She's like, no, why would you do that? You know, so I was like, when I wrote Mary Jane, I was just like, okay, if I were the summer nanny, you know, so, you know, and then I put my family, so anyway, it borrowed from my life, everything but different parts of my life. So in part of this, babe, come here. In part of this, she hasn't kids, she's only had 1 kiss in her life. So my first kiss was from a boy named Matt Bowling. And when Matt Bowling kissed me, he pushed his mouth against mine like really hard. And then he stuck his tongue in there like a pneumatic drill. It was just like, and that was what it was. And there was drool running down my neck, and it was like pooling in my clavicles. And it went on for so long. And I remember like my lips hurt, my face hurt. And I remember thinking, when is this going to end? And that was my first kiss. So
And Matt's here right now.
show her these to great people. He's not gonna name everyone. Right. And so, yeah, I hope he learned after that. But it was just like so awful. So in this book, Zippy's had 1 kiss, and it's the Matt Bowling kiss.
Oh.
And then she's also afraid of diseases. And I have to admit, I'm a little afraid of diseases. Like I'm a little paranoid, like, you know, I mean, whatever, I can go out to the world. But anyway, so this is in real life. I'm going to tell you a story. So in real life, when I was married, I'm divorced now, we had these wonderful neighbors, and there was a gay couple, and one was a doctor, Johns Hopkins, and one was a writer, and they were like the cutest, most fun couple. And we had them up for Thanksgiving. We had our 2 kids, and the one who was a writer, not the doctor was very quiet. The writer started telling my kids at the Thanksgiving table about every venereal disease he's ever had in his life. And they were old enough that they could get the story, and everyone was just hilarious. He's like, and then I was in, and he's going through his history when he lived in Paris and when he lived here. And most of them you'd kind of heard of them, or if you didn't, you'd heard the word. You're like, oh, I don't know what that is, but I've heard of it. And then he got to fuzzy buttons. He's like, and then I got fuzzy buttons. And we're all, you know, we're eating. We're like, what do you mean? He said, I woke up and I had fuzzy buttons on my testicles. And we're all looking at him, and my kids were like, what? And he's like, yes. And then of course, you know, my kids, we're all curious, and I'm just like, well, what color were they? Yeah. He's like, they're purple. And we're like, how big? And he's like a pencil eraser. I'm like, you woke up and you had fuzzy buttons. And he's like, yes. So my kids and I have all been afraid of fuzzy buttons. But none of us have, you know, it's not like I'm asking them if they run into fuzzy buttons. I feel like they might tell, you know, but I certainly, and I keep, you know, I meet people, I'm like, have you ever had fuzzy buttons? I'm like, I don't know what would happen. But anyway, so Zippy's afraid of fuzzy buttons because one of her neighbors, her mother's best friend, which is based on this guy, told her about his fuzzy buttons. And she's only had the Matt Bowling kiss. So, and her roommate, Raquel, who's based on a roommate that I had in college. So I had this beautiful roommate, and we'd walk down the street, and I am not kidding you, cars would pull over, people would stop, and I'd always be like, kind of like waiting for her. You know, and they're just like, you're beautiful, will you be in my movie? You know, whatever. I'm just like, you know, and she was beautiful. And she ate every other day because I mean, some of you are too young to realize this, but in the 80s, 100% of women's magazines had at least one diet article in there. 100%. You couldn't consume anything without being told to lose weight or how to lose it. And it was always like, lose 10 pounds in 5 days, or 5 pounds in 2 days, or get into that dress by Monday. And it was just like, and I was, you know, and you just, anyway, so this beautiful friend, she ate every other day. And that was her thing. And she was always trying to get me to do it. And I couldn't. I tried and I tried and I tried. And I remember just like coming home one day and like eating a box of Triscuits, standing up. I never even see Triscuits anymore, but I feel like they were around in the 80s. Like, yeah, are they still around? Like,
They are.
Yeah. Yeah, they sound kind of good to me right now. Yeah, so I remember the one day I was like super hard trying to do the every other day. I think I was like 4 or 3 and I'm just like. So anyway, so Zippy is 19. She works at Magnin. She, grew up above a liquor store. She has no money. She had one dress when she started. She colors in her shoes with eye pencil, which is what I used to do, and then you rub it out with Vaseline, and it works. So like, you get rid of your scuffs. She's only had the matte bowling kiss, and she's afraid of fuzzy buttons. And she lives with Raquel, who eats every other day, and Raquel is gorgeous. And so this is just a little scene because it's hard not to give stuff away. So this is just one little scene between them. Am I okay on time?
Yeah.
Okay. So Zippy, since Raquel's dating somebody, and she's a little more important. Zippy, what I have to say is super important. Okay, say it. There's no way I can have sex with Paul before you at least make out with a grown human boy man who doesn't drill into your mouth with his sea slug tongue and drool down your neck. He also has to not have fuzzy buttons. I had once overheard Toby tell Howard about a venereal disease he got years ago that gave him caterpillar textured dots on his testicles. I'm not sure I believe Toby's fuzzy button story because I sure as hell have never seen fuzzy pink dots on any man's anything. I think he said they were purpley gray. Do not fear fuzzy buttons. Raquel threw all her limbs in the air and then let them flop back to the floor. Fine, there's still AIDS, pregnancy. Stop. Condoms. Okay, by the way, this is 1985 when AIDS was AIDS, before we knew HIV. Okay, listen, if you were in college, this would be freshman year, and most people who haven't lost it already lose their virginity freshman year. Your mother had you when she was your age. She wasn't a virgin. I love my mother, but I don't want her life in any way. I mean, I really, 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 really don't want to work at the hardware depot and end up with my generation's version of Howard. You work at Magnin. For now. Raquel sat up, turned around, and looked at me very seriously. We need to go to blue light. You need to be out in the world like the Magnin girl you are and make out with someone who is nothing like Howard so you can see you're not your mom. Blue Light was this bar in San Francisco that Boz Skaggs owned. And everybody would go there and everybody you knew saw Boz Skaggs, but I feel like I went there 20 times and never saw him. Like, did everybody really see him? And I'm the only one who didn't, but it was a cool bar. Sometimes it seems like you choose how I live my life. I was only half joking. Fine, I'm simply making suggestions. Fine, I said. But what if no one wants to make out with me? Stop. Anyone will make out with you. All you do is choose the guy, let him think that he's choosing you. Then if you decide you want to make out with him, you give the signal. But I don't know the signal. This is the problem, Raquel. I don't know how any of these things work. I don't know the signal. I don't know how to kiss. I don't know how to choose a guy and be the chooser, or how to decide that you want to be the choosee and let them think that they're being the chooser when in fact you're choosing them to choose you. Enough. Raquel stood. Meet me in your room for the Jordache jeans. Raquel's Jordache jeans had become too big for her since she'd lost weight. They now fit me, but I could only wear them when Raquel was home to help me get them on. I guess you're being the chooser of what I wear too. I slipped off my skirt as we walked into the bedroom. The jeans were sitting on top of my dresser. Raquel handed them to me and I stepped in and pulled them up. The fly remained open in a wide letter V. Ready? Raquel asked. Go for it. I lay back on the bed, sucked in my stomach, and held the button as close to the buttonhole as possible. Raquel straddled my legs, pulled the pull tab, and worked the zipper up. It was like trying to close an overstuffed suitcase. Help me stand, I said, once the button was secure. I couldn't bend to sit up and would have to work on loosening the jeans in the car. All right, so for those of you who do remember, we did do that in the jeans.
And with a hanger.
Yeah,
Like a metal hanger, yeah.
Oh, I mean, which is insane. Like, why did we do that? Like, why didn't we just have jeans that fit? Like, I think of the stuff we did. So anyway, so this book, it's just, like everything, it's parts of my life thrown together. I did do it in 1985 because I wanted the sort of, AIDS was really scary and you didn't know how you could get it. And people thought they could get it from the handrail on the escalator. And it was sort of a tension, an underlying tension in San Francisco, especially. So I threw it all together and I played around with some other things because you have to make some stuff up in a book to make, have a story, to have things change. And that's how I wrote it. That's okay. And then any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, we'll open it up to Q&A. So if you have a question, you can just kind of raise your hand and Jessica, you can.
Yeah,
I have a question.
yes.
So you put lots of cool things in your books, like you refer to commercials, you talk about products, you talk about things that instantly evoke that
Right,
time period, especially like if you're my age and you went through those time periods.
right.
Do you do research? Or how do you get all that stuff?
Well, so sometimes I'll research, like, and I listen to songs from the year when I'm working. I put on the playlist and I constantly listen to the songs and I get that. And sometimes I'll research, like, and sometimes, I mean, see, I have a problem in that because I grew up in this, I don't know if it's because, but I did grow up in chaos and I'm very disassociative, which means as a child, I was sort of a silent person in a room just watching. It was almost like I was just watching everything and remembering everything. So even as a little kid, I can tell you stuff from two, I remember as two, like I was just always watching. So there's certain things that just stick in my head. And I will go back to make sure I'm remembering right. Sometimes I'll be like, was that really what that was that year? And I will check on it. So I'm, stop, sorry, no big problem. So so it's a lot of it's just stuck in my head. I mean, it's sort of, I don't think most people would want my brain because it's like, I'll like a map, I'll be like, where is that country again? But then I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember bottle caps candy or something, you know what I mean? Like I've got Screaming Yellow Dog, the stuff that's stuck in my brain, like I could never be a newscaster. But I guess I can write a book, but so a lot of it's just in there and then I will double check and make sure. And I'll also check songs, like if I do a song, I'll be like, was that song around in 1985? And I'll make sure it came out and was playing on the radio by then. So I do a sort of fact check of myself. But most of it's just kind of stuck in there. And then with this book, I mean, I was there later than 85. I just wanted to put it in 85 to have that tension. But I was there like 89, actually, like much later. And this book, it was memory, like these people and the dresses and selling it, all these customers were really there. So they're like in the book, you're going to meet the orange ladies who are just buying orange. And there was a cult, I don't know if it still exists, but it might not, but there was a cult with this guy, they made a documentary about it that was really good actually. And everybody had to wear orange and he was silent, he refused to speak. And so they all just thought he was just the wisest man in the world, but he was having sex with them and they were all having orgies and he had like 20 Rolls Royces and they were like wearing orange and having orgies and going to India. And I knew a woman, I worked in a restaurant once and she went to it and she was like, it's just really beautiful and the sex is a beautiful thing, whatever. And then I remember when I was working at Magnin, some orange, and I was like, oh my God, and they just wanted orange. They wanted every orange dress in the store. I'm like, yeah, we got that, and they had money. And so anyway, so they were part of that cult. And then in this book, I mean, that was the other thing. It's like, I intercepted Magnin at probably like, I never had less money in I had nothing, really. And so, and I'm just interacting with these unbelievably wealthy people or people who are spending so much money. And so I had to deal with myself. I had to deal with ideas of like jealousy and envy and, and desire and materialism and what I wanted and what really did make, and I was facing that every day and I would think about it too. And I didn't think about it so much with older women, but when there was a girl and we were all called girls, but when there was somebody my age who would walk in with a credit card and could get anything she wanted, it was like, I had to, and I hated, and I still do. Jealousy, I find, is one of the worst things to feel, and it's one of the worst things to feel about yourself. And so I would work on it really well. And so there's a girl in here, a sorority girl, and she was one of my regular customers, and I did have to train myself. I would just think, she's so nice, and why shouldn't she why shouldn't she be happy? And why shouldn't she have this credit card? And why shouldn't her father fly her down? I mean, it was like, why not? I would, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want her to not have, and I had to, and it was like some weird mental exercise, but I did get over it and was able to just love her. And she'd come in and we'd hug and I'd run around and pick out clothes for her. And she was my same age and she was, spending a couple $1,000 and I'm just thinking, and there's, but whatever, you were just happy for her. So there was all this like psychological stuff of just being faced with this at that age, at that time. And just in my life and figuring out who I was and what I wanted. But you asked me details and yeah, so this was all, so this was all just memory. So all these, and then there's a divorced woman in here. And that woman, I remember her in particular too, because I was so young and I got married at 23. I was really young, but I was in love, and I just remember her getting divorced and like she'd lost all this weight and just like dealing with people who are getting divorced and what that felt like and how that it was associated with clothes. Like she just wanted new clothes. She was going to redefine herself in these clothes and like how, it made me think about clothes. Like I would, it was like acting. I would try and dress up. would go to the Salvation Army and I'd buy nice clothes and you fix them up. You do a button, terrible seamstress. I couldn't do a straight hem, but I had a friend who could, and you just fix them up and you look the part. And I remember it was like acting. I would look at and I'd walk around and think, you're acting this, but I always thought we're kind of all doing that when we get dressed. We're all sort of, you're dressing about who you want to be or who you want other people to think you are. Even tonight, I don't get what I'm going to wear. And I had like 3 different outfits in my head and, but it's like, although this also had to do with driving in the car. But, and it's like, who do you want to be and what do you want to project? And you see that in the clothing and the things. So all the customers are real, all the salespeople are real, and all the dresses she sells are dresses I sold. So, and then the roommate is, it's all just, I just steal it and change it. Like you get to control it. It's like a fun way to, well, they say, I went to graduate school and in graduate school, there were 12 of us and somebody was reading something and they say, they say, a lot of writers are the children of alcoholics and there were 12 of us and we're like, really? Like, yeah, somebody's reading some articles. I don't know what it was. And they're like, yeah, because like when you're a child of an alcoholic, you can't control anything. But when you write, you're like God, and you can control the world. And so somebody started, they said, well, I'm the child of an alcoholic. And I said, well, I'm the child of an alcoholic. And so there were 12 of us. And we went around, we got to the 12th, and he said, I'm not the child of an alcoholic, but my dad was a heroin. And I thought, there's 12 of us. And it was like, here we all were in graduate school. I mean, I don't know if you went to every writing program if they all would, but it was like we were. It was like, wow, this is intense. So anyway, I don't know how I got to that, but I the world. Yeah.
Did you write on the way?
What
Write
my
along the
whole
way?
life? Well, so here's I mean, the interesting thing is, so I because my parents didn't pay attention to us, and like we just were doing whatever we wanted to do. They didn't look at report cards. They didn't. We just sign our notes the first day of school so that we could write all our own notes and then go to parent teacher conferences, and we just had to do all our own paperwork and ride bikes. So I, when you're a kid, a girl especially, you always get a diary for your birthday parties and for your birthday. And you know how you write the first page and then you put it away. I was the kid who filled every diary every year. And so I wrote every day my whole life, which is also might be why I remember things, because it would be in my head and then it would be written down, which doubled it up. So I wrote and all the way my whole life to my 20s. So I mean, I was just diary. And then I got married really young at 23 and we moved to Canada. And I was everybody has this friend, or maybe you are this friend, who writes you the 16-page single-spaced letter. That was me. And I was the person, I was just like, when I walk down the street and there's row houses, because in California there are row houses where row houses here and it's like married couples. And I'm just like writing these letters, and there was always writing. And then when I got to Canada, I wasn't allowed to work or go to school because of my husband was employed, but I wasn't allowed to do that. So I had a baby really young. I had kids in my 20s, and I was like cleaned and I gardened. I'm a terrible cook. I couldn't do it. I'm just like, I can take up for the restaurants. I was just like, and I just was like, and then my husband brought home a computer and I was reading so much. Always was a reader. My father was an English professor. Always reading, but I started writing stories when I was in Canada. I was alone. I was lonely. I had no friends, and I was writing every morning. And then I found that if I wrote, because I was so lonely and sort of sad and isolated and scared, but I found if I wrote, I felt okay. Like before, I was like waiting for him to come home from work. I'm like, but if I wrote, it was like something in my head was okay for the rest of the day. So I started writing then in Canada. But when I look back, I was always writing. Always in the diary, always the letters, always. And when I started writing short stories and novels, I stopped writing a diary. It was like, it was always the writing.
We probably have time for one more question.
Anything?
Yeah.
Did
I,
you find yourself looking for chaos now? Are you more comfortable with chaos still?
I probably am comfortable with it, but I find myself looking for peace. Like I used to see my refrigerator, it's just like spotless. My house is spotless, and I'm the person who's like, somebody puts down a glass and they take it up and I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like really clean, but my brother, my sister and I, the three of us, we're all like super clean. And we all have driven our partners crazy. Like we all want nothing on any flat surfaces. Because when I was a kid, like anything you wanted, you had to move 50 things to find it. So there was like a counter and it was like, okay, what do I need? And it's like move, 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 and there it is. I want, yes. So, but when chaos happens, I'm totally, yeah, like calm, and I'm not undone by it. Like it'll be happening and I mean, as I said, I'm super like, oh, okay, here's, wow, look at this. I'm just super, yeah. So, but I don't seek it out. I mean, maybe I did because I have, you know, I am divorced. So, yeah, so if you know, I want calm for me. I'm looking for a calm man. It's like a country song. Maybe it's looking for a calm man. Yes, I definitely don't.
All right, I think we're going to say thank you so much.
Oh, thank you
Jessica.
so much.
We love having you here. Let's give her one nice big round.